Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Sarah Kong. I'm a Microsoft Certified Trainer and a Microsoft Technical Trainer. This is the AZ-104 exam prep video series, and this one focuses on storage. We're going to talk about configuring access to storage and what you need to know for that. We'll also get into the data and storage account and what you need to know for that. And then finally, we'll talk about the Azure files and blob storage. So here's kind of the breakdown of all of the information that you need to know. A lot, but you can get to this from your exam prep page so you know exactly what you need to know in here. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Azure storage firewalls and virtual networks. Know about this section in the portal. Know what happens when you enable this and know what happens when you work with that network routing, right? So being able to secure your storage accounts. Also, be very aware of our SAS signature, a big topic in the exam, right? Knowing that they're a time-limited one. That's a big piece that you might see as an exam question. So knowing that I can set a start date and an expiration date on my SAS signature, that the SAS signatures are great for those, applications or guest accounts that need access to your storage for a time period, right? Know all about that and know a little bit about the keys, right? How those keys work. Also be aware in storage accounts, another big piece about stored access policies and what they are, right? Understand that you can obviously create and modify them, but why you create them and the fact that you can create 5 access policies. Right? Also know that there's 2 access keys, right? How you manage those access keys. Be aware of the difference between a Microsoft managed key and a customer managed key. You might not necessarily need to know about the key vault, but it might come up in a question. They won't ask you to know how to configure it, but know that you can store your access keys in key vaults. Also think about the identity-based access for Azure files, right? So that granular access. Be aware how you can set that up. You can still use your IAM, so your basic, role-based access control, as well as policies, as well as shared access signature. So know the difference between the 3. So again, that's your SAS versus access keys, right? And then finally versus your IAM. So know the difference between these 3 when you would use one over the other. You'll definitely see that in the questions about the storage accounts. So know how to create and configure a storage account. That's a very important piece, right? Understanding that the storage account becomes, a URL and how that works. Know that there's 4 different types of data management in a storage account. A container is actually part of your blob. So expect in the exam that you will see all the questions about redundancy, right? Know that there's the different redundancies. You've got your LRS, you've got your ZRS, you've got your GRS, right? And then you've got your GZRS. And then you've got the read-only ones as well. So be aware of those ones, when you would use them and why you would use them. Also be aware of object replication. Right? So how it's asynchronous between the 2 regions. Be aware of that for those types of questions. Encryption. Encryption is a big one as well. The encryption is the Microsoft versus customer managed keys. Know that everything in a storage account is by default Microsoft managed keys and it is encrypted, but that you can also use your customer management keys and that it uses that 256-bit encryption. Right? Know how to know where you can go to configure that. Be aware of Storage Explorer and AZ Copy. So these are the tools that a user can use to be able to manage their storage account. Especially with the Storage Explorer, this is where you can manage many storage accounts. Because as we know, are you just going to have one storage account in your subscription? Probably not. You're going to have many. So what is a tool that you can use to be able to see all of them across many subscriptions? Well, that would be Storage Explorer. And then how can I get my data from on-premises or other subscription or other storage accounts, I should say, into another storage account? And that would be where you would use AZ Copy. So know those 2 tools. File shares. File shares, know that, that you can use Windows, Linux, Mac, right? That we support that SMB 3.0. Know how easy it is to go into the portal in here and get the right command to be able to paste into a compute workload to be able to connect to a file share. The one big thing too is that file shares are for your Azure resources. They're not collaboration, right? So know that. Know that a Blob storage account, in order to be able to store something in a Blob storage account, what's the first thing you need to do? Well, create a container. And then from there, you can go in and upload those blobs into that container, right? So know and be aware all of that. And you can see in here, know these, right? So know all about the portal and how to create and do things in the portal. Storage tiers. This is a big topic, right? You know, even when you take the course, we definitely go into all about hot, cool, cold, and it's all about, you know, that cost optimization. So you might get questions in the exam where they'll talk about cost optimization for your storage accounts. Chances are they're going into storage tiers. And what's one of the things we know about storage tiers? They have a life cycle, right? So there's a life cycle capability that you can automate your storage tiers. So know all about that. That's a big topic that you potentially might see in the exam. So the other big piece that you need to know for the exam about storage is you also will need to know about the snapshots, right? So I have an understanding of the snapshots. They're great for that accidental deletion. Also be aware of the soft delete, right? That you can retain that for up to 1 to 365 days. So that is the other piece that you'll need to know for the exam. I mentioned the lifecycle management a couple slides ago. Here's where we can see that now. So this is what you'll need to know for the exam about how to add rules. One of the great things about this piece too, and be aware of it for the exam, is that you can have multiple rules, right? And multiple rules based on the different dates. For example, I can say go into a cool storage after 30 days. After 90 days, go into an archive, and they can all be in one lifecycle management policy. So be aware of that. You will definitely get tested on that. Versioning, right? Not like SharePoint versioning or any type of collaboration versioning, but this is what we use in our storage accounts. Know that, right? So know that this is a point in time state of the blob, right? It's not a change of, you know, a word or something like in collaboration. So be aware of the blob versioning, that it assigns a version ID, and know all about that. So to recap, what you need to know for the storage portion of the exam is be aware of redundancy. Know all of that. The 5 types of redundancy, your LRS, GRS, ZRS, RAGRS, RAGZRS. Know when to use all that. Know the life cycle, right? The life cycle policies that work with your tiers. Know when you would use one tier over another. That's your cost optimization. Know your permissions, right? And with the permissions, you've got SAS versus access keys, right? Versus your IAM. So when you would use one over the other. Also be aware of the encryption. When we think about encryption, we think about, you know, what type of encryption keys we can use. Know that you can use Microsoft Manage or the customer managed key. And then the other big one that I would always recommend is be aware of the policies, right? Your stored access policies, and then finally your firewalls. How you can block access to your storage account at that firewall level.